This is HCAM TV.
We will be
Through the chair, you're live on HCAM TV.
Sound good?
Yes, sir.
All right. I will call the meeting to order. As a preliminary matter, this is Brendan Tedstone, Select Board Chair. Permit me to confirm that all Select Board members are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Irfan Nasrullah?
Here.
Brian Herr?
Her, yes.
Mary Jo Lafreniere?
Here.
Amy Ritterbush?
Here.
This is a joint meeting of several boards and committees, some of whom may have quorum present. Boards and committees who may be present with a quorum include School Committee, Parks and Rec Commission, Board of Health, Board of Assessors, Board of Library Trustees, and Planning Board. This open meeting of the Hopkins Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we're complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings publicly accessible in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allow public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda, identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may be also broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some of the attendees are participating via video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We're now turning to the first agenda item. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Kamala, who will introduce our facilitator this evening. They will manage participation by our presenters and then the question and answer period. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes of the meeting. Should any votes be taken this evening, they will be conducted by roll call vote. Mr. Kamala.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the town senior leaders, it is my privilege to greet you and to extend a warm welcome to you all. Our illustrious, distinguished elected leaders, chairs of appointed town boards and committees. In my language, I say, I see you. We all agree the past 12 months have been unlike any other in our living memory due to COVID-19. Indeed, this was a year that stretched our resilience and public service spirit. I am honored and proud of how, together, we came through and kept the community moving forward. Our hearts go out to those who have lost loved ones, lost jobs, our neighbors who are facing food insecurity. Let's not forget our school kids who would cherish being in school in person full time. In all your municipal offices, we miss the vibrancy and camaraderie that come from being with you in public meetings face to face. Our first responders, inclusive of town and school departments, health officials, nurses, social workers, fire officers, police officers, DPW, facilities, have responded tirelessly to COVID-19, ensuring that Hopkinton residents and employees continue to be safe and well. Following the declaration of the governor's emergency order, we all pivoted, first working remotely, and then later transitioned to a hybrid model, working remote and on-site. For now, our valued residents and visitor customers are only to conduct business at your town offices by appointment. Community Hopkinton. The Hopkinton community at large has lived up to Hopkinton's trademark, higher sense of community. Neighbors have been very supportive of each other, cooperative when asked, and complying with various health-related orders issued by the state and town. The town's response continues to be marked by actions of care, hope, encouragement, and our undying, selfless commitment to the most vulnerable. Our collective response is another illustrious Hopkinton milestone that we all have to be proud of. What happened, Josh? Yeah. One of the fundamental reasons Community Hopkinton has successfully navigated the stressful 12 months living under COVID-19 is the community's distinguished collective planning efforts over the past years, which include, amongst many meritorious achievements, making the necessary smart investments. I'm sorry about that. Making the necessary smart investments that have made Hopkinton a $4.5 billion community, the #1 public school system in the Commonwealth, and the safest small town in the USA. That planning was achieved through collaboration. It stands therefore to reason that the future of Hopkinton begins with our continued collaboration. Tonight, once again, we gather in the spirit of the old African proverb: if you want to go fast, you should go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Working together tonight, as we have done in the past, through shared dialogue, we will be able to expand our institutional capacity, enhance our capabilities, inspire collective intelligence, expand visibility into our decision-making while shaping the town's priorities in the coming year. To begin the year, your department heads and staff have been working collaboratively on their respective visions and goals, laying the foundation for tonight's meeting. For some, this was new work. For others, consolidation of work with you. Specifically, they identified their respective departments' vision, big goals, small, little goals, strategies, and action plans. Most of the outcomes from the collective work are reflected in the town manager's FY22 comprehensive budget proposal. Tonight, we would like your questions and comments on where we have come and what is next. Where do we go from here? Before the meeting, you were provided with a list of the project and budget tasks and asks, current and in the future, tied to the department's present goals. The project list and associated dollar numbers represent a point of reference for our dialogue. We are not making any decisions for town meeting. All of us are familiar with the town's process. After the senior leader presentations, a time for dialogue will lead into the takeaway exercise, prioritizing all the town's projects as data for annual town meeting and medium-term decision-making. Allow me at this point to share with you that John Wortman, the best-selling author of Mastering Communication at Work, an executive coach and trainer to cities and towns across New England, is our facilitator tonight. He will help us celebrate our progress, focus on the issues that matter to the community, and send us away with a clear request on our next steps. Again, on behalf of our senior leaders, I welcome you warmly to tonight's dialogue. John.
So our agenda tonight is we're going to begin with Norman, talking about his vision for the town, as well as his big goals. He's then going to talk about his ask around making those goals possible. If you have the list of projects that each leader is going to present tonight, you can follow along. Secondly, we'll then go through the list of our senior leaders, and they will present again their vision, where they want their department and their work to go, their big three goals, because one of the problems in municipal life is that we create goals that are too big to actually achieve in any year. And so each of these leaders worked really hard to say, these are the three most important things, particularly during this odd time. Each of them will present after Norman does, and then we'll take a break somewhere around the top of the hour, and then we'll come back and have time to ask questions. In that question time, you can put them in the Q&A if you'd like me to ask them for you, or you can put your hand up and then I will call on you, either because you put it up literally or because you use the functions in Zoom. Again, we're going to go over each person's vision, as well as their big three goals, and then the ask that they've put in the budget list that you're going to be prioritizing for us at the end of the night. So if you want to keep track at home, like the scorecard in baseball, you can already be putting these in rank order as you listen to people present, again, their vision, their goals, and their important projects. Norman, let's begin with you. What is your vision for the town of Hopkinton?
Thank you, John. This may not come as a surprise to some of you who may have witnessed my first interview with the town of Hopkinton 11 years ago. Back then, I said to the town, I was looking for an opportunity to work side along a community in building the best town hall in the world. Back then, I was influenced by my work, international work at Oxfam. I can tell you, my aspirations have not changed. It's just that now, far removed from my international work, I have scaled down my scope. The aspirations, again, as I said, still remain the same. Thus, my vision is that together we build a town hall that is trusted by all people to provide the best local governance in the Commonwealth.
Hear
My
that?
goals.
Yeah, hear that lofty, lofty vision statement. Each of your leaders will be providing that clear one-sentence statement for you. And then they'll be providing three goals. And then they'll be providing their ask. And they'll each be doing it in 3 minutes. We're giving Norman a little bit more room tonight. Norman, I'll give Superintendent Kavanaugh a little more room too in terms of the size of the asks that are in the budget list. Norman, what are your three big goals?
Simply stated, number one, as we're doing tonight, develop a clear, repeatable strategic planning process for the town.
Number two.
Facilitate the aspirations and processes of the renewed finance team, given that Hopkinton is a growing community and that we are facing a structural budget deficit. This is important for me in terms of preserving and supporting the town's fiscal health.
And number three.
Support employee happiness. We have a great team here at Town Hall. We very talented, very smart individuals. We need to keep them here in Hopkinton.
So what is your budget ask to be able to provide better strategic planning, intentional work with the finance team, and then employee engagement and happiness?
All comes down to training and wellness, and the budget ask is $70,000.
And again, each leader is going to do what Norman just did: vision, goals, budget ask, and you want to be thinking about at home, which are the priorities for you if you were going to rank them according to what you care about or your committee cares about most. Which brings us to Chief Slayman. Tell us what your big vision is, and I will just let you talk for the next 3 minutes.
Our big vision is a caring and safe community that welcomes everybody.
What are the goals that go with that?
I have three goals: community risk reduction as a mission, public safety facility as a collaboration, and succession planning, my champions.
What are our big projects that go with that?
So number one, community risk reduction is empowering and equipping people to take action to eliminate hazards, reduce risk, and improve conditions in our community. And my plan to bring that forward is to educate and build people. We need champions, and I am going to follow the FEMA model of community risk reduction.
And again, as I've talked through Norman and Chief around the method here, we're just introducing it. As future leaders begin to talk, you can just go through your whole presentation, which brings us to you, Ben. Or do you want to do more asks there, Steve?
I'm still asking.
Keep going.
Number 2, public safety facility. We have a report that assessed our current public safety system response capacity and facilities for efficiencies and opportunities. The report includes findings and options for building a community risk reduction collaborative. The plan is that we need a site. And my final goal is succession planning. And I really think this is the opportunity of the first 2 brought together. It's through community risk reduction, which is recognizing how strategic community risk reduction can help foster communities that are safe, healthy, prepared, and resilient. This is a natural evolution for the fire and EMS service. The transition from fire prevention to community risk reduction is natural, and I want to develop the leaders and champions to bring this all forward. I hope you heard the alignment and echoing with the town manager's work in my report. Thanks.
Love it. Ben Sweeney, you're up next. And everybody who goes next, please introduce your department as well.
So the vision of the accounting, grants, and procurement departments is to improve the short and long-term financial outcomes of the town of Hopkinton. In the coming years, our 3 primary goals are as follows. Number 1, modernize the accounting function by leveraging automation and unused applications within our existing Munis financial management system. These efforts will improve effectiveness, efficiency, and transparency, thereby collaboratively working with you all throughout the decision-making process. Number 2, building a long-term roadmap to secure grant funding. Substantial grant opportunities are available from the state, federal, and local authorities. These programs often rate projects farther along the planning process more highly. We seek to work with you all to understand projects throughout each board and committee's pipeline. In this way, we can respond to emerging grant opportunities and collaborate with our colleagues to incorporate components into projects that would improve our ability to secure grant funding to help bring so many exciting and impactful projects to fruition. Number 3, we seek to be a value add partner to the community while simultaneously ensuring compliance with federal, state, and local regulations. By providing financial analysis and actively engaging with our colleagues across staff and boards and committees early and often, we become partners that can help drive effective service delivery within legal parameters. And to accomplish these goals, we are not requesting any additional resources in the budget submission provided to you early this evening. And I thank you for your time and for the opportunity to serve this community.
What we're doing tonight is an experiment in how we actually interact around our planning, because normally we do this in a room, in a workshop with an audience, and we're trying to see how we can get really memorable memory files, really clear memory files in a process that allows you to really hear what everybody cares about most. Brian, you have your hand up for a question. Let's experiment a little bit and see if that works. I am absolutely committed to the 2 hours tonight, Brendan. I promise I will not get us past 8 o'clock.
So real quick, Steve Slamman, is your public safety vision, is that just for fire or is that police and fire?
It is, think of the sense of community risk reduction. I literally have examples. I could talk for 2 hours of my team that everything from working with police, DPW, dispatchers, youth and family services. It's a collaboration of reducing risk in our community versus the traditional just building response models.
But I'm thinking in terms of the facility and the site that you're talking about. Is that facility and site for police and fire combined? As we see a lot of towns doing, or?
No, because what you just said is more of a traditional public safety facility to house just both groups.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is having rooms that will facilitate working together and having the people there. It might be the Board of Health that's working with me right now in the EOC that's doing a pandemic. It might be working with Youth and Family Services to get to a child that needs help. And the plan, they've already designed it to be able to facilitate those groups to come together easily.
Yeah, thank you.
That's an example of an incredibly relevant question to the goals themselves. And if those questions come up, please do either post them in the Q&A or raise your hand and I'll call on you. which brings us to Amy Beck.
See, I knew I'd forget to unmute. So I'm representing the Senior Center, and at the Hopkinton Senior Center, we envision a Hopkinton where seniors are a valued and respected part of the community, where they may have active and independent lives and can live safely in their homes for as long as they choose. Our goals for the upcoming year are to maintain and expand the social connections for our most vulnerable seniors. You know, one of the ways we envision this is our ability to connect with our virtual platform. In March of 2020, we had to move all our programs to virtual. For many that worked, for others it did not. And so we're not really sure how the future will hold for us as we go forward, whether we will be in person or virtual or some kind of combination of all of the above. But we will continue to look for ways to connect with those who do not have the technology, and even with those who may not want to have the technology, which is a little bit more challenging. We're also looking to enhance and expand our programming to address a wide range of wants and needs within our senior community. This is, we know that the needs and wants of seniors ranging in age from 60 to 100 are very different. And we try to accommodate that currently in our current programming. However, as the demographics change and grow in Hopkinton, we know that these programs will need to change and grow as well. So this spring and early summer, we will be starting the strategic planning process, which will help us define the needs of seniors in Hopkinton. One of the programs that we'll be looking at specifically is nutrition. We currently provide meals 4 days a week to 40 to 50 seniors a day, with meals that are either picked up or delivered to their doorstep. Prior to COVID, these meals were in-house at the senior center 5 days a week. And so we'll be looking more deeply into this program and to ensure that our meals fit the guidelines of healthy eating for seniors, and also will utilize the Massachusetts Council on Aging nutrition advocacy information and a nutritionist to accomplish this.
Love it, a very clear ask.
And lastly, we're going to be working towards Hopkinton becoming an age and dementia friendly community. We will be creating an action team, engage with residents, and develop and begin implementation of the action plan. The age-friendly movement describes a movement to make communities more welcoming and livable for older residents and peoples of all ages. It describes efforts that we can take together as a community to create places where people can grow up and grow old together. And currently, we do a number of things that would promote that with our memory cafes and support groups. But we'll be looking at Hopkinton as a whole and with what as a community we need in order to address and recognize, ensure that we are an age and dementia friendly community. And we are going to welcome participants from the wider community to work with us on this. So from the form that you've been given, our strategic plan and nutrition consultants are estimated to be about 20,000, but that's out of our operating budget. So as a whole at the Senior Center, we like to think that Hopkinton should not only be known for its schools, but also as a welcoming place for seniors to continue to live well into their retirement years.
Well done. And again, as you're looking at your sheet, everyone, you know that some of these are in the operating budget, some of these are asked for the future. And so again, you're still ranking them on priority when you think about why these are important to you, because we're going to, at the end of this workshop, have each of you send in the list of 1 through the final number of opportunities here, so that we have real data to be able to present about these boards and committees' opinions, as well as your staff members' opinions of their priorities, of their own work, but also of their colleagues. Which brings us to you, Superintendent Kavanaugh. Talk about your vision, talk about your goals, talk about your asks.
Right, thank you. Good evening, senior leader colleagues and elected officials. As we've stated many times tonight, Hopkinton is a very desirable community to live in. And with that comes the byproduct of increased enrollment in our public schools. It's a wonderful problem to have, but indeed, as our numbers continue to grow, we are seeing that our facilities are cramped at this point, but they will be quite too small in coming years. Each summer, our administrative team in the Hopkinton Public Schools gets together, and one of the district improvement goals for this year is to take a look at our facilities, to hire ourselves some kind of a consultant, and to create a study group to really analyze the facilities in the Hopkinton Public Schools, and to take a look at those facilities alongside the growth and alongside all of the programs that we run, and we run very successfully. Something we have already done is we've hired a consultant to take a look at that enrollment over a 10-year period. And the prediction was that at the end of this school year, we would have 4,111 students. 10 years out, we would have 4,856 students. When I came to Hopkinton, which is only 5 years ago, we had about 3,450 students. Today, we are over 4,000. So you can see that our student body is growing very quickly. A second thing that that consulting group did for us is it examined all of our facilities. And using Mass School Building Authority standards, they went in and they took all of the areas, the footprints of our schools, and shaded them different colors. So if something, for example, was shaded red, it indicated that it was more than 20% undersized. So if you go through these drawings, and I have included them in a PowerPoint, which I can share with Mr. Kamalo, you'll see that we have some serious deficiencies in our buildings. In every single one of our buildings, even a brand new school, a school that opened its doors a couple of years ago, our cafeteria and common spaces in all of those schools are much too small. We have too few classrooms. Our numbers of classrooms, even at the Marathon Elementary School, which again opened just 2 years ago, not enough classroom space. We have put on modular classrooms at Hopkins and at Elmwood, and those classroom spaces really now just house the kids who are in front of us. So that those are not for planning for the future, they are for the kids who are here right now. We have spaces that we need for small groups. Our English for speakers of other language population, when I arrived in Hopkinton, was at about 40. Today, we are over 400 students who are considered to be ESOL, 250 of which I think are getting services today. So we have very few small spaces for special education, for tutoring, for remedial work, for reading instruction, for English as a second language instruction. Those spaces need to be enhanced in our public schools. And finally, when we look at the spaces for extracurriculars, so in our high school, for example, our auditorium is too small, our band room is too small, our media center library is too small. All of those spaces are currently too small based on the children who are here attending the Hopkinton Public Schools today. At the same time, and this has happened for many years, we've had a statement of interest in with the Mass School Building Authority for the Elmwood School. I'll go through our vision, our goals simply stated, and then I'm going to ask Susan Rothermick, our Director of Finance, to just very quickly tell you how we arrived at our literally hundreds of millions ask on that sheet. So our vision for the schools must keep pace with population growth, 21st century instructional evolution, and growing our physical plant needs. We want to make sure that the kinds of programs that we are offering, career vocational technical education, STEAM, robotics, all of those kinds of things that are always evolving, we want to make sure that we are keeping pace, because that's who Hopkinton is educationally. Our goals: to establish a facility study group to analyze facilities development needs alongside student growth projections and programming needs and expansion, to monitor our Elmwood Statement of Interest with the MSBA, and to plan for major building construction projects, which may mean the reconfiguration of buildings and grade levels for grades 2 to 12. While we would not be thinking right now about doing any updates to pre-K to 2, we have a brand spanking new state-of-the-art facility, Early Learning Center. It's amazing. It's not the kind of facility that you can transform into some kind of elementary school, but our kids transition every 2 years. They go to a 2-3 school, a 4-5 school, a middle school, and a high school. Those transitions are not only somewhat unnatural, but the other piece is that a principal just gets to know them as learners, teachers and then they move on to another building. Essentially, in our elementary schools, 50% of the population changes every year. Not really a great model. So while we have the opportunity to reconfigure our buildings, I think we need to take advantage of that. So in terms of our project and budgeting, we will need to hire consultants, engage in engineering and design, and engage in construction projects. You will be happy to hear this number. 157 million is where we landed. I know when we filled in the spreadsheet, we were at 200 million, but we have just saved this body $43 million in the course of an afternoon. And I will just ask Mrs. Rothermick to tell you a little bit about how we came to those numbers.
Thank you. So again, to what Dr. Kavanaugh was speaking about, we had gone through each of our buildings and looking at our current square footage compared to the MSBA using the enrollment projections. So where would we be at our peak enrollment? We come up with a deficit across all 5 buildings of approximately 187,000 square feet. So just looking at that deficit analysis using a $500 per square foot, that's 93 million just to address that. And as we spoke about the Elmwood School replacement, if we were just replacing in kind, that would be another 43 million. And the other long-term project would be a renovation to the middle school. So you can reorganize those costs, but that is basically how you get to the 157 million. But one of the other options that we looked at, similar to what, or along the lines of what Dr. Kavanaugh was speaking about in terms of reducing transitions. If we were to, for instance, take all the square footage of the schools that we have, keeping in mind the deficits. So if you were to take the Elmwood and the Hopkins school and combine them, reducing those transitions, so you would build a 2 to 5 school as a potential, using that MSBA square footage at our peak enrollment, that building project is 109 million. Then if you were to take the Hopkins, the middle school and the high school current square footage and combine them and think of those, all that square footage in terms of a secondary facility. And what would that look like using the MSBA square footage that was needed? Then you're looking at a deficit of 31,000 square feet. And the issue with the beginning model in terms of only looking at deficits, we don't have the space to put an addition on every single building. That contiguous land to be able to address each individual building that way is constraining, if not, we're not able to do that at all.
So Susan, I need to summarize there just because of time tonight.
Yep.
Can you give us the asks in terms of the buildings in a quick summary?
So the asks would be looking at a configuration of a potential 2 to 5 at 109 million, a reallocation of the remaining square footage at a 15 million. And then we still need to look at the deficit for the Marathon School and the renovation of a middle school. So the total ask again is 157 million.
Thank you very much. And Carol, could you summarize the 3 big goals again, very simply stated, because there was a lot of good data there.
I surely will. 3 big goals are to establish a facility study group to analyze facilities development needs alongside student growth projections and programming needs and expansion, to monitor the Elmwood Statement of Interest with the Mass School Building Authority, and to plan for major building construction projects, which may mean the reconfiguration of buildings and grade levels for grades 2 to 12.
And the reason I had you do that is because what we don't do well enough in municipal government as we get into the details is make sure people are clear about the deductive punchlines of what we're saying. And what you gave was such incredible information that people need to know. I wanted them to reaffirm the numbers as well as the why. Thank you very much to both of you. Which brings us to Josh, you're next. People were wondering at home where that data sheet is. Is that in their email?
That was circulated to the panelists. If there's a request to share that outbound, we can accommodate that.
That's great. So right now, let's panelists, it should be in your email if you're wondering where it was. And then Josh can get that to you afterwards as well. Josh, you're up next. Tell us about your vision for IT and about your big goals as well as your ask.
Excellent. Thank you. Good evening, folks. My name is Josh Grossetti, Director of IT for the town. The IT vision is for Hopkinton to be the most technologically advanced town in the world. Hopkinton is transparent, and Hopkinton turns data into information and uses that to drive pragmatic decision-making for the benefit of our residents, volunteers, and employees. With Norman's prompting, I cheated, and we've got 4 goals. So those 4 goals, simply stated, are to increase transparency, increase collaboration, increase training for users, and create operationally efficient processes, and to ensure resiliency and security of platforms and data.
Just because you use a technical term there, what do you mean by transparency before you go into your ask?
Sure. So increase the amount of data and information that is proactively published and readily available to employees, residents, and volunteers.
Absolutely love it. And what are your asks for the budgets?
So we have one major project with a budget component, which is online e-permitting and online application forms. That is budgeted at $90,000.
And what you're hearing, those of you listening at home, is that you have asked for the senior center at 20,000, asked for the school system at, what was it again, Susan, 146 million? Did I get that right?
157 million.
I tried to save a little bit more. I wasn't able to do it. And the reality is that each of these have different level of importances to you at home, but none of them, no matter what the price, are less important to our overall community, which brings us to recreation. So the reality of our life together is it's not just about technology. It's not just about the safety of our community, but it's about the way in which we actually get to enjoy our time together. Jay, give us your vision for rec in the town of Hopkinton, as well as your goals for this year. You're still on mute, my friend.
Sorry about that. Again, the Hopkinton Parks and Recreation Department will strive to offer a broad spectrum of recreational programs and facilities to every resident, with a focus on promoting inclusion, diversity, and safety in all our offerings. Our goals, simply stated, is to continue our work with other town departments, including the Board of Health, Public Works, and public safety officials, to adapt our programs and implement safeguards to ensure the safety of our residents and to be in compliance with all applicable COVID safety requirements. Another goal is for us to bring back some popular programs that were very well attended prior to the COVID pandemic, if at all possible. We are hopefully optimistic with that goal. And finally, we want to continue to work with town finance and accounting to continuously improve our financial structure, to better analyze our operations, and to assist us in some strategic planning going forward. Our budget items and asks, we're asking for $15,000 for a public ice skating rink next winter. We're asking for $12,000 to bring back concerts and movies on the town common. And then through the Conservation Preservation Act, we're asking for $350,000 to build a public skate park at EMC Park.
Absolutely love it. And I'm going to call on Megan to go next, because if you're putting a skate park in there and we have an ice rink, there's going to be some dispatch that's going to need to happen. Megan, you're next. I think you're on mute as well.
I'm usually so good about that. Sorry about that.
No problem at all.
So I am Megan Durad. I am the communications director with the Public Safety Communications Department. We support police, fire, DPW, and we're a relatively new department, roughly 5 years old, a little over 5 years old. So we're still in the realm of growing and becoming independent, if you will. And I've been in the position as director for about 16 months or so now. So we're slowly building out to become a department independent, like all the rest of the departments are. So our vision, the Hopkinton Communications Department vision, is to provide and maintain world-class emergency services with courtesy, compassion, and efficiency to save lives. And our three goals, excuse me, simply stated, to create a communication center that operates as efficiently and effectively as possible while providing the highest quality of service to the community. To create uniformity through updated procedures and training programs for our communication staff. And to create a public education program specific to communications in order to educate the public and introduce those voices of public safety that no one ever sees. So essentially try to build programs amongst ourselves to get that out there and to show it to the community, hopefully presentations, once we can open back up after COVID and whatnot, revamp our training program through our in-house training program and the training that the dispatchers attend and things like that, and potentially work our way towards a strategic type planning to get us in the future, as to continue going on as effectively and high quality of service, and what we need to really strive further than we already do.
Any budget asks?
I do not have any budget asks tonight.
Well presented, and that then leads us into Chief Bennett. You just heard from one of your people who takes care of us so well. What are your vision for us, and what are your big goals?
Good evening, John. Good evening, everybody else. So our 5-year strategic plan has a very broad vision, and it's kind of too wordy for someone standing in the street trying to make a decision. So kind of our vision is very short and sweet when we apply it. Is we work to ensure safety, the feeling of safety, and improve the quality of life in everything we do. And now during these times, especially improving the feeling of safety of everybody based on principles of inclusion and trust, as well as dealing with the uncertainty of COVID. Right now, we're spending a lot of our time helping people with the feeling of safety and trying to work to give them the best quality of life. My goals, simply stated, are to advance the progress of our strategic plan with special attention to 3 of those goals that we've identified: support the public safety facility group that have been working tirelessly moving that program forward, and to exceed all expectations of the police reform bill. We are a very professional, very well-trained department with strong policies, but the measures within the police reform bill are a baseline that we're already at. So we want to keep moving forward.
Any budget asks?
I'm looking to expand the police department by 1 position. It's $58,000, and that would be in my operational budget, but also recognize that there's another $11,000 estimated cost to benefits.
And your emphasis on equity is well taken, and paying attention to all the members of our community as your department does so well. And yet this work isn't done, which is why I'd like to next call on Maria Casey, our HR director, who one of the things she's done is put together a website that's either live or coming in terms of the equity work that's possible and the DEI opportunities in our town. Maria, tell us about your vision and big goals.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. I'm Maria Casey on behalf of the Human Resources Department. Our vision is to enhance the workplace and more closely mirror the community, to identify areas of focus that are in line with the mission, improving upon areas not yet fully developed, to assist the town and its employees in providing customer excellence while enriching the work experience and having fun where we can. We accomplish our mission by imbuing these values: trust, engagement, partnering, aspiration, ethical, commitment, and work-life balance. The 3 strategic goals are strategic planning for pandemics and organizational resilience, to advise and advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I have added belonging to that acronym, and to develop a plan for succession planning. My budget ask is aligning with the town manager and is part of the operational budget. And I just want to say very briefly, I'm sure my fellow senior leader colleagues join me in thanking the town manager for all his support, guidance, and wisdom through this project.
Now, as nice as those words are, they cost money, which brings us to Tim, who I haven't been able to hold back much longer. Tim, tell us what your vision is and your big goal is for finance.
Thanks, John. I'm happy to speak about finance functions tonight, including treasury, cash and debt management, collections, assessing, and payroll, as well as support for financial planning, analysis, and budgeting townwide. Our vision is that we're a team engaged in structured, continuous improvement of our business processes to drive high-quality service outcomes. We do that to improve our own mission operations and to support sound financial decision-making across the town enterprise. We have a series of goals that align and link upward to the direction provided by the select board and the town manager, and that flow down to each team member in their individual performance plans. Our first goal is about documenting and improving our business processes to improve quality, reliability, and consistency of our mission outcomes, and to make us more resilient operationally. The hard and tedious work of documenting processes provides the perfect chance to review and improve how things are done. One key focus of this effort is to fight the tendency people have to write processes that make life easier for themselves. Our focus is on customer-centric processes that involve a priority on ways of doing business that make it easier for others to engage with us. Our second goal is about leveraging technology to improve our efficiency, accuracy, and again, our operational resilience. That includes untapped functionality that is available in the Munis resource management package the town already owns, and other technologies that can serve our business lines. Our third goal is about progress on a web-based financial dashboard that links cost and performance information to support town and citizen oversight and to support good financial decision-making across the town enterprise. We produce a lot of valuable information in annual and quarterly reports and in briefings, press releases, and at public meetings and hearings. But that information isn't logically archived or organized, and therefore isn't easily available to everyone. We need to go beyond handing out specific information to specific people on demand and start posting broad sets of information that people can easily tap into and pull from. We believe we can pursue these goals within our operating budget with no identified additional capital needs. I'm happy to note that finance has made at least some progress in each of these areas over the last 2 years. The main factor in our future success will be having the discipline to focus on these priorities in competition with other opportunities and emergencies that continue to arise. Thank you.
Summarize again, Tim. What are the big three goals? Give them really briefly because they're so important when we have so many big asks in this process.
Documenting and improving our business processes, leveraging the technology we've already paid for, and getting information out in web-based dashboards.
Every single one of your leaders is trained to do this right now. So when we get to the question part tonight, if you want either recapitulations of what we talked about, or you want to push for more specificity, don't hesitate to ask. Which brings us to Connor. Tell us about what your vision is and big goals are.
Good evening, everyone. As most of you know, I am the town clerk, and I also then head the elections and registration department. Our vision in the town clerk's office is to continue to modernize the town offices, both for ourselves, but also to help improve community access and improve our interactions through interdepartmental activities, which as a small department, all of the advances we make are by working with all of these amazing colleagues that I have here in this call, as well as all of the neighbors that I have here who volunteer their time and work with me very closely on all sorts of different tasks. To achieve that, the goals that we're looking at are upgrading and advancing the procedures and technology that we use in the office to make our permitting, licensing, information more accessible and easier for residents, as well as with a more solid workflow so that it makes it quicker that people get what they need. Number two is to create a plan for staffing, which I've already spoken about a little bit here and there, that would make sure that as our town, our community continue to grow, people do not see a decrease in service from their town government. And finally, something that's always been a personal goal of mine with this and something that drives me is to increase civic engagement and arm residents with easy tools to participate and make the community better. Because the only way that we make our community better is for all the members of the community to work towards that and have the information and the power to do it.
Very well done, Connor. And our next place of civic, any budget asks before we go on?
So currently there is no budget ask for this fiscal year. There was one in there, but as we discussed in budget hearings, we're working with the town manager's office on other creative solutions to look at staffing needs. So you might hear more from me in future years, but right now, nothing.
And one of the other organizations that's so critical to our civic engagement is our library, which brings us to you, Heather.
Hello, let me just get my notes up. Okay. The library inspires exploration, discovery, and engagement as we enrich and strengthen the social network of our diverse community. And we do that through 5 key strategic priorities, which are to connect our community, provide access to education, arts, culture, and knowledge, create an inclusive, welcoming, and safe environment for all, strive to deliver an exceptional customer-focused user experience, and steward and obtain resources to accomplish these strategic priorities. Norman let me get away with 5 goals listed. So I'll try and be fast with them.
No, take your time, because it's really important that people hear them. And again, you are one of the centers of the community in terms of civic engagement. So many resources are needed. We'd love to hear them.
Okay. So the first goal would be to resume normal services to the greatest extent safely possible in the coming fiscal year, depending, of course, on COVID circumstances and our staffing levels. And some of the things this would mean would be resuming public use of our study rooms and computers, expanding hours when the building's open, resuming in-person library events, letting community groups back in to use the library's event rooms, and filling frozen vacancies to make sure that we have staffing levels necessary to enable this return to full services. Our second goal would be to continue to develop our collections and community resources, and some of the projects that are under discussion for what that will mean for FY22 include local history collections related to the pandemic, a library of things, additional electronic resources, and non-English collections. Our third goal is to engage more deeply with equity, diversity, and inclusion. And this would include making sure that we have programs, resources, and services that are themed to reflect key cultural holidays and months such as Black History Month or Women's History Month, to create benchmarks for future improvement by tracking the current representation of diverse voices in our programming, collections, and services, and to train staff. Our fourth goal is to continue to reach out to and partner with key groups and demographics within the community to ensure responsive library services, especially with these schools, which we've heard very clearly the community would like to see us coordinate with more directly. And finally, to create key plans and documentation to improve our operations. That would include things like a staffing plan, a marketing plan, a technology plan, continuing SOPs, additional or revised policies, and memoranda of understanding with our friends in our foundation. In terms of budget asks, our FY22 town budget is level funded with no new requests. As with the majority of non-staffing expenditures for the library, additional investments that may be required for some projects will be funded from non-town sources, which may include things like our foundation, our friends, gifts, trust funds, state aid, and grants. We are looking at the potential for additional budget requests in FY23 and onward, most especially for personnel. And the staffing plan that we'll be developing in the next year will play into that. There is a number for personnel on the sheet that was shared with everybody. And I'll just say that is a very, very gross ballpark based on a couple of things that I know specifically want to happen right now, and then a very general estimate in terms of number of FTEs that we would be looking at potentially just to sustain a reasonable level of services, you know, with at some of the levels the community is asking for with things like programming.
And again, you're talking about so many expanded services. That's why the extra budget ask is there, which brings us to John and DPW. We know that there are extra needs there as our community continues to grow.
Through the chair, good evening, everyone. My name is John Westling, and it's my privilege and honor to serve this community as your Director of Public Works. The vision of Hopkinton's Department of Public Works is to enhance the quality of life in Hopkinton by providing world-class, sustainable public works services that support the needs of residents and businesses. Our three primary goals are: number one, develop an affordable water supply plan that meets the needs of the town. Number two, increase the size of the DPW and expand its capabilities to meet the increased needs of the growing community. And number three, reduce the dependence on outside consultants by hiring DPW engineers. I've proposed a project to begin to address goal number one, and the sustainability of Hopkinton's water supply is threatened by four factors: an ever-increasing demand as new customers connect, increasing levels of manganese in our wells, water management permitting limitations, and the inability of the Ashland water supply to provide us with sufficient water, especially during periods of drought. These threats pose a very challenging and expensive future for our water supply, with many variables that must be evaluated. I propose appropriating $60,000 to hire an engineering firm to help develop a comprehensive water supply plan that will select the best option and begin the preliminary planning and permitting to pursue that option to ensure adequate water supply for generations to come. Thank you.
Loud and clear. And with those serious needs, we want to hear from our town engineer and facilities director next, because if you'll help us, David, understand the other parts of the DPW formula.
Yes, hello, everyone. My name is David Del Torrio. As facilities director and town engineer, I'm the department head for the facilities department. The vision for the facilities department, we strive to exceed the expectations of staff and residents for providing healthy and safe environments in all public and staff work areas to create the most efficient and pleasant atmosphere for conducting town business. On an engineering angle, it's to provide engineering support for all town endeavors to limit risk and provide professional oversight of consultants and vendors.
Any special asks, David?
We do have a few asks in collaboration with the police department. We're looking for a roof replacement project ask at town meeting in collaboration with Parks and Rec Department and Town Manager's Office. Drainage improvement project at EMC Park, and in collaboration with Town Manager's Office and Permanent Building Committee, we're looking at continuing evaluating the center school site. And then another coordination with the Town Manager's Office is long-term file storage, which there hasn't been a formal funding request. It's tied up in the center school study that continues to move forward.
Loud and clear. And people don't realize during this time of transition how difficult it's been for our facilities people, because you've had extra burdens come up out of nowhere. So we're very grateful. Which brings us to Sean, our health director. You've had an equivalent change of year. Tell us about your vision after this strangest of times.
All right. Good evening, Sean McAuliffe, representing the health department. So today happens to mark the 1-year anniversary of the first case of COVID-19 in Hopkinton. It's been a tremendously challenging year, but a year that has illustrated what is best about Hopkinton, its residents, its municipal employees, and our business partners. Together, we evaluated opportunities that the pandemic presented. We defined a set of strategies to meet those challenges, and now we find ourselves charting a recovery and/or an adaptation to the new norm that we will reside in. With that, our vision is simple. It's to continually improve upon Hopkinton's health metrics. To succeed over the near term, it is important for our department to execute upon the following 3 goals. The health department needs to develop and implement a COVID-19 work plan that will address COVID-19 vaccination, surveillance, and case management over the next 3 years. To accomplish this, we will work with the Hopkinton Emergency Management Group to start an after action report that will shape the plans to come. 2, we need to implement our current COVID-19 vaccination plan within the role defined by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. The plan will likely evolve to include an endemic response. There will be costs associated with that response. And number 3, I'd argue that most residents can't list the roles and responsibilities of the health department. They're quite varied. As such, we need to market the department so that our stakeholders understand these roles and responsibilities. With stakeholder input, we can continue to innovate, meeting the needs of our residents and businesses while serving to improve the health outcomes within the community. And that is it.
Any special asks, Sean?
We're asking for $15,000 to supplement the vaccination program, figuring that in fiscal 22-23, we'll likely have to bolster our existing vaccination plan that we have for flu and other illnesses. It's likely going to have to include COVID moving forward.
And one of the groups that's always affected are our kiddos. And so our next presentation is from Dawn. Tell us about our Youth and Family Services.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be with everyone tonight. And I'm just truly honored to work in this town with the senior leaders that you've heard from so far and that you'll still hear from. And Hopkinton Youth and Family Services vision is that Hopkinton will be a town in which all people are valued, where behavioral health is a high priority, and residents have a place to turn when they need help. Our goals are to strengthen, the first goal is to strengthen and clarify the network of services available through Hopkinton Youth and Family Services, the community, and the region, for people like Joe and Mary, who are raising their grandchildren due to the impact of the opioid crisis and their daughter's addiction. They live on an extremely fixed income, but through our work with them, they have accessed many services for food, veterans benefits, support with applications that provide free lunch at school, waived fees for extracurricular activities, summer camp for the kids, fuel assistance, and so much more. They have even secured therapy for the kids and a support group that helps them better cope with their daughter's addiction. Our second goal, provide primary prevention services to build a healthy community culture. This is important because through prevention, we can stop problems before they grow or even before they start. Through small shifts in the way people think about behavioral health and simple changes made to policies and surroundings, stigma is reduced. Help is then secured much earlier, and health practices are adopted that benefit youth and their families and the community at large. We accomplish much of this work through our interdisciplinary prevention coalition, Hopkinton Organizing for Prevention, or HOP, and our youth group, our regional youth group, Metro West Youth Teaming Together, otherwise known as MITE, and in collaboration with other town departments and community organizations. Our third goal and ties right into our big ask, is capacity building to enhance response to the community and increase prevention programming. So we're responsive, but we want to be preventative. And with 1 3/4 staff, we're stretched too thin to meet the growing needs of behavioral health and economic need that we were seeing even prior to COVID-19, to be perfectly honest. And COVID-19 has just exploded that for our department. Due to the pandemic's impact, these needs have grown and are projected to rise well into the future. We would like to grow our collaborative work as well to benefit residents in the maximum way possible. So our big ask is for another staff person who would be a program coordinator and licensed clinician that could flex with us with these changing times. Right now, we're being asked for a lot of programs, and so we'd plug them in that domain, but there would be flexibility as things shift in the community and we're back in person more and more to provide that clinical role, to see more children and more young people for counseling. And this increased capacity will allow us to better serve in the years ahead through increased training and clinical services to the community, provide responsive support for residents impacted by the prolonged pandemic, expand support of youth groups like Just Youth, a group for BIPOC youth, and creation of a Hopkinton Youth and Family Services Ambassador Program, like a Friends of group that will carry our work forward so that citizens, it will be on the lips of citizens and be a household word. One of the biggest challenges of our department is that we're a silent department so often because we're serving people in the most confidential way and with the most tender things going on in their lives. And so to have ambassadors that you know, the word of mouth that will nudge somebody to come see us, that's an important need. And to secure grant funding to offset the costs of staff and prevention programming.
Love it, Dawn. Thank you so much. Any other senior leaders other than Elaine, who I wanted to bookend us with the town manager's office that I haven't called on tonight? Elaine, then you complete this first part of our agenda. After you, we'll take a 5-minute break and come back for questions and the assignment before we leave before 8 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. My name is Elaine Lazarus, and tonight I'm representing the Land Use Planning and Permitting Department. The vision of our department is for Hopkinton to become a vibrant, inclusive, and important place. There are many things we could do to achieve this vision, but 3 of them we've identified are: first, to foster a culture that embraces new ideas; second, to increase access to resources and opportunities; and third, to ensure common open spaces are accessible and well managed. And then one of our asks is an online permitting and online application forms, which you've already heard about from Josh with IT. So that's a common goal that we have. And then we have 2 projects that we would accomplish in-house, and that is to make more information available to the public online and to prepare property management plans for town property and then implement them.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from your leaders. And what's now important in any good meeting is that we take a 5-minute break, exactly 5 minutes. We'll come back at 7:12. You need to stand up and get the blood into your head so you can think about the great questions you're going to ask your leaders. We'll come back and restart at 7:12 if you put your screens to black.
Oh, that is me, my hand. I'm like, that's what everybody's waiting. Yeah. I didn't realize we were waiting.
We'll start again in a minute, ladies and gentlemen. We'll start again in 1 minute. We've reached the end of this evening's break. What you've heard from each of our participants so far is their vision for their department. You've heard their 3 big goals that they want to achieve and know they can achieve this year. You've heard their budget asks and sent to you by email, and citizens can get this as well. We have those asks put into a spreadsheet, which we're going to ask each of our committee members at the end of the evening to rank in order of what's most important to you. Those will all then be sent to Ben Sweeney, who will then do a data analysis. We're having our leaders do the same ranking so that we can know what we think of in terms of our town leadership, as well as our professional leadership in terms of priorities. That data will be there exclusively for helping us make decisions. And to further that process, it's a time for questions. So if you'd like to ask a question right now, you can put your hand up by using the raise hand function in Zoom, or I'll be scanning through the panels tonight and you can put your physical hand up as well. We'll do our best to find you. What are your questions for our leaders this evening? You can also put questions in the Q&A section as well. Brian, you're up.
Carol, what is the appetite at the MSBA for a sort of whole-scale school facilities reorganization as you're contemplating? Like, you know, obviously we can't go this alone. They struggle with $40 million buildings at a time. How would we be received if we go in there with a $160 million ask?
So I suppose that's a great question. Right now, we're in a strange place with the MSBA, and we are because typically they would have reviewed last year's statements of interest and given us a response in December. They haven't done that, and they had even indicated that this spring you'd be getting your answer for last year's SOI after you were filling out this year's SOI, but there has been none coming forth. I would imagine the MSBA, and I think Hopkinton is a reason that this happened, because of what happened with the Marathon School. We kept telling them our enrollment is growing, and they kept saying we will only build a school for the kids who are here and now. And in Medfield, I know that they allowed them to build a larger school based on predicted enrollment because of what happened. So you go through that whole process of looking at parcels of land and looking at the facilities you have. And I think that they have become a kinder, gentler MSBA. But I will agree with you, Brian, that it probably would take some finagling to prove to them. One of the difficulties that you have with Hopkins is even with the new classrooms, you are now in a place where 2 grade levels may not fit in that building in coming years. So we've got to figure out either how to add to it or reuse it, or take it offline as a 4 or 5 school and make it something else, and transition 2, 3, 4, 5 into kind of an intermediate school. But I've gone a long way to say I agree that it will take some finagling with the MSBA, but I have a positive outlook right now.
I think it would be really important to engage. Obviously, this is a multi-year process, but I think it's really important. It would be really important to engage Representative Dykema and Senate President Spilka now, sooner than later, in this whole conversation and in the process that we anticipate needing to follow going forward. But there's going to have to be some kind of dispensation of some sort, I think, if it were to come sort of at one overall grand plan.
Yes, and we have done that. We speak very frequently to Representative Dykema about it, and Pooja in Senator Spilka's office.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Other questions?
I have a question. Do I need to raise my hand?
Yes, no, Joe, I hear you. You're on.
And good to see you. My question is for Youth and Family Services. I'm glad to see the additional staff member request, but I am guessing that there is a lot of new activity to the Youth and Family Service office, given the state that kids have been in with school and out of school. and the lack of sports and defined goals being lost for children. And the cases that you see, I believe, may be only the tip of the iceberg. And how can we be even more proactive or responsive to the needs of our community, understanding that you may only be seeing a small portion of the cases that could need your help?
Great question. Dawn, your response.
So we have 45 minutes. But no, the interface referral service that is funded through our department has been picking up on a lot of those referrals for mental health. We contracted with them last year as before the pandemic, so 2 years ago, to kind of pick up on getting people who have insurance and have access to care, the care they need, because it's very difficult to connect to clinicians and to the outpatient services people need. So promoting that, making sure that people in the community know there is a service available to them that takes a lot of the work off their plate, that they'll talk to a trained triage person who will then take their insurance benefit and the needs that they have and look for a match for them. And they don't have to call through several lists and find out that practices are full, et cetera, et cetera. That's one big thing that can be done right away, and that we've done. Our Facebook page always has it pinned to the top. Our website has that information pinned to it. And maybe, you know, as we're talking, I'll throw it in the chat, that's one big thing people can do. Have them reach out to us. You know, the more the merrier, because we have resources here. Like there's, you know, more that we can direct people to for help. And then I would say, believe kids, listen to them. You know, I'm a parent, and sometimes I fall flat on my face in this regard, right? Like, because we're like, what do you mean you're complaining? You know, you have so much, you know, but to listen to them and have empathy, and to journey with them and to say, yeah, I'm hearing you. It's really hard. Tell me more about it. And to let them own their feelings, to let them be in this space of having this difficulty, that it's okay to not be okay. And then be listening for those key points where they need more help than just to lean on you for a little while, when their lean has to be bigger.
Do you feel there's a good connection with the schools today? Is there an opportunity maybe to get you in front of faculty or administration who may not fully be aware of the situation? Do you feel there's a good connection with the schools, I guess the question?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Carol and I just collaborated on a mental health grant. So, yeah, you know, and I get great referrals from the counseling staff there. And I would say at least weekly, Colleen or I are in touch with somebody over there. And, you know, I don't want to speak too soon, but we may even have our, you know, the intern that we trained having a different role in the school system too. So yeah, we have good collaboration with the schools.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Joe. Laya, what's your question?
And my question's for Sean. Considering, I mean, you and Casey have been run completely ragged this year, and I don't know what the projections are oncoming with the pandemic and with where we might end up. But the ask that you have feels, I know it sounds kind of funny, but it feels kind of low. Are you sure that, you know, you don't have staffing needs or anything to kind of help balance the weight that you're putting on your shoulders right now in coming years?
Great question, Sean.
So that is a good question. Thank you. So we are interviewing. We have a second interview on Friday for a new health agent. Both of the candidates are actually quite fluent in COVID response. So we believe that that new staff member will take a significant amount of the burden off. And we're looking to replace one of the per diem staff, and then quite likely bring on or just maintain the existing college students that are assisting us. So we feel that staffing should be adequate, you know, moving forward.
Yeah, does that help, Laya? Fantastic. I'll answer your question. I'll ask your question in a second. Jim, Irfan, you're next.
Thank you. So my question is towards facilities, and just wanted to know if there any thought has been given to digital storage, cloud-based storage, instead of finding a physical location to store something and maybe reduce cost by storing stuff, storing all their old files in the cloud.
Dave, what's your thought? And then you're going to get a second question from Jim here in a second.
Thank you, Irfan. In collaboration with the town manager's office, we've been talking about cloud-based and electronic file storage for a long time. We've been in contact with a few different vendors. We had DPW did a little test a few years back with an archive system over at the Fruit Street facility. There was a considerable cost associated with it, and I just think with all of the different priorities in town, it's just it's not that it's not important, but it hadn't made the cut, I don't think, as the years kind of have progressed here. But even just this week, town manager has mentioned how we can move that forward.
Yeah, I mean, it seems as though we have the crisis right now over at Center School, and we're looking for additional space to store things. I don't know how the cost works out, but it seems more like a permanent solution than moving our files from building to building.
Any other comment, Dave?
No, thank you.
Then that brings us to Jim's question. He wants to know from you, given your workload steadily increasing, is it time for us to hire an assistant engineer? Is there any other assistance or support you need to function in the future? That's for you, Dave.
Yes, actually, in collaboration with town manager's office and DPW, I believe the town is looking at including in the budget a construction inspection position, and that will help as a cost-saving measure, as well as assistance to both DPW and engineering department for growing the engineering division in the town. So yes, we do need additional staffing to grow the engineering department, and I think maybe this year finally we're going to be able to make a step towards doing that with this new position being filled, should the budget pass.
Jim, if you have a follow-up, you can put that in the Q&A. Muriel, you're next.
Hi, thank you. I had a question. I see a couple opportunities that had to do with the land use planning for the online permitting. And also, I think I remember the finance department wanting to put up ultimately a data-driven dashboard to keep people informed and have access to the information, the financial information in particular for the town. I just kind of want to throw it out to the group. Is there any thought to also exploring sort of an overhaul and upgrade of the website to make it more user-friendly at the same time that we're thinking about these other innovations?
Would you like that answer from Elaine?
Totally fine. Yep.
Yep, Elaine, you're up.
I think that's an important thing for us to look at, and I would direct that to Josh as well, since they're in charge of the website. But definitely we have needs for the website that aren't being met.
Josh, cue us in.
Yeah, we can certainly look at making changes to that based on input for sure.
Does that get at it, Muriel? Or do you want a little more detail?
I guess I understand it. I just want to sort of advocate for looking at it collectively. If the finance department is looking at making innovations and the land use department is looking at making innovations, I think that's the time to look for the whole town to look at in a more collective way, making sure that the website is upgraded all at once.
I hear that note. It's on Josh's list, and Norman was nodding as well, which brings us back to Irfan.
Yes, thank you. My next question is for the DPW. I know we're talking about public water, and I just want to know if any thought has been given into having a decentralized system instead of a centralized system where specific areas of town are served by various wells.
John, what do you say to that? You're still on mute, my friend.
Happens every time. Thank you for that question. The way that our system works is that they all rely on their separate aquifers, and there's a lot of redundancy built in, because if one of our wells has to be turned off for a reason, the other wells can supplement that water throughout the entire system. We have 7 wells currently, so that there's a bit of a risk if we were to decentralize and apply certain wells to certain neighborhoods, only because if those wells went down for any reason, a bacteriological hit, increased manganese, problem with the pumps, then that section of town would be without water supply. So there are options that we can look at, and that's part of that $60,000 that I had proposed is looking at something like that.
Right. I mean, I'm not advocating for it. I just wanted it to be looked at, but I think you've answered it pretty well for my purposes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Amy, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what Muriel had said about the website. I don't know if there's anything wrong with the website software itself. It's just, I feel like there needs to be something in the strategic plan of somebody who's checking it frequently and seeing how does it look to a visitor? Can they find the information and just clean it? You know, there's always broken links. And I know if you ask them, they'll fix the broken link, but it just seems like there needs to be more of a comprehensive plan, not necessarily a technology plan, but administratively, who is looking at the website pages and making sure they're current and that people can find what they need without having to ask.
Great question. Josh, who's our content manager and how does that work?
And so the IT department right now, in most instances, makes those updates. We do have a number of staff in other departments that have been trained and have direct access to make those updates and are encouraged to do so. We rely on department heads and senior leaders to provide that content as it needs to be updated.
And it sounds like there's a request here for an aggregation meeting to really explore how we have a systematic approach to our content management, both for what people see, but also access to information. We know that that's true for youth and family. We know that's true for the library. And I've heard over and over again, access as one of the topics tonight. And those web resources are the places where Josh, you and your team can take it to another level. The intelligence and talent is definitely there. Does that get added, Amy, or do you want to go deeper? Great, thank you. Irfan, you are the star of the questioning tonight. Keep going.
Thanks. Kind of on that topic of access, you know, everybody in town who wants to access it has to pay for an ISP. Has there been any thought towards municipal internet service similar to Shrewsbury?
Josh, is that on you or is that one for Norman or Elaine?
I'll take an answer from whoever can answer.
Start with you, Josh.
Yeah, I think that may be more for Norman or Elaine.
Yeah.
Norman, you're up.
Yes, Ifan, good question. This is an option that we looked into several years back. We did not have the bandwidth to implement that project, but it's something that we can get back to.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So it's painful that you were in and out a little bit there, Norman, but it emphasizes the bandwidth challenges that we are facing and we'll need to pay a little attention to. We heard you say that it's been looked into, bandwidth was the issue. Brian, you're next.
I'm not sure if Dan McIntyre is on this evening or not. I didn't see his name as I scrolled through. Dan, are you out there? I'm curious about the center school project or status and kind of what next steps are there. I know the select board's talked about a $50,000 number, Norman, if I remember correctly, for getting some consultants involved to help us start ascertain sort of what the options might be. That is a big asset, is right in the center of town. And I think it's got to be one of our top priorities here over the next 5 or 10 years to figure it out, hopefully not 10 years. but certainly a few years. And I'm just wondering if Dan, if he's out there, if he can comment a little bit about where we are with the process.
And if Dan is not here, briefly, the Permanent Building Committee, in fact, is ready to come before the Select Board and give a preliminary report on the work that it has been doing over the last 12 months. And that report will provide more detail behind the $60,000 request that Dave referred to in his presentation.
Second edit, Brian.
Yeah, I can wait on that, but I think it's important that we all consider that we've got a very large asset sitting in the center of town, abutting our beautiful common, with a new roadway headed towards it in the next 2 years, and we can't sort of have that thing implode on us. We're going to have to get our head around that one as a community, and I don't think unless we sell it outright, which I don't think necessarily would play out, but we haven't made any decision yet. There's going to be a big price tag associated with that too.
What's your takeaway ask there, Brian?
I guess I'd really kind of wait on the 50,000 or the presentation from Dan and the Permanent Building Committee coming up here, specific to what next steps are and sort of what we see as the process going forward. What do they see as the process going forward to make that decision, get town meeting to agree and get some sort of project underway there. We lost heat this year, so the building's not heated anymore. That's not good for any building. And we have to deal with this sooner than later.
Loud and clear. Norman, do we have a timeline on that report?
I believe the Permanent Building Committee should be coming to the Select Board in the next 4 weeks.
There it is. We'll follow it up on the agenda there, which brings us to Gary.
Thanks, John. Question for Superintendent Kavanaugh. As we look back at the past year, certainly it's been a challenging learning environment, but I think we've also seen that our kids can learn in some contexts outside of schools. And I'm just curious if you've explored at all some alternative learning models that might not require a substantial expansion of schools, but either get better utilization by using more hours, or some combination of in-person and at-home learning, or forms of curriculum as maybe an alternative to a pretty substantial building expansion.
Dr. Kavanaugh.
Sure. Several people have suggested that. For me, I think that the jury is still out a little bit. We've always offered, tech and VHS classes, and historically, those are places where our kids who, are not super organized or super ambitious, they struggle in those places. And I think, some of our teachers would tell you that right now, the online learning, while it has been, helpful, and it's probably been the best that we have been able to offer, our kids they do struggle. For me, there really is no substitute for that face-to-face kids establishing relationships with teachers and with subject matter and with curriculum in a classroom. I don't want you to think I'm ruling that out, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to put too many eggs in the basket of we don't have to think hard about our facilities planning simply because we have a tool called Zoom, or we've seen some success with kids doing that kind of remote learning. It just really, I can tell you that I don't think it's not a replacement for what would happen in the brick and mortar setting.
Gary, does that get added, or do you want to go further?
Nope, that's okay. Appreciate the perspective. I would say, though, that I don't think Zoom and Teams are necessarily the only options for virtual learning. There's a lot of other things and ways that we can improve how we learn virtually that I think at some point might come into consideration as well.
Yes, I agree. One of the things that we did do this year is we invested in Schoology, which is an online learning platform. And I think as our teachers become more proficient with it, it will absolutely open up more doors to online learning in that kind of remote learning, that give and take that will be able to happen with a whole lot more facility between teachers and students.
Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. Robert, you're next. Mike, we'll get to you after that.
So my question's about the public safety facility. I heard Chief Slayman talk about different groups like the DPW being able to collaborate and meet with fire department. But what permanent staff would be there? What kind of scoping in terms of facility size, real estate? like 15 million just seems like this big number, and I don't know what is driving it. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about the underlying things that are driving that number.
Chief, you're up.
Sure. So I think there's I don't want to do the presentation unjust at this point. It's ready to go. The pieces are that we had an architectural firm assess the public safety needs. It started years ago when Mr. Kamalo just looked at the fire need. Then we looked at police and dispatch and EOC. 80 South Street kind of triggered our imagination. And now with this pandemic community risk reduction theory, we took spaces that would satisfy the needs of the fire department and then allow for these other collaborations to come into the building. And they calculated out these spaces to do the functions. So I think then the presentation will give you the details to that. Right now it's in blocks and they calculated out square footage needed to facilitate that. And then they went assessed land sites that could accommodate that. So in a general sense, that's where it is.
Follow up, Robert.
So what I'm hearing is it's really a work in progress. This like 15 million is an estimate of, okay, there's available land, potentially available land, and it's going to roughly cost this budgeted number. And then the facility is roughly going to cost this much amount for this square footage. And that's where we are. It's not like this definitive, like, okay, we need 3 meeting rooms, we need 16 offices. It's not that far along.
It is not that far along, and it went from the need of a substation, which had a really definitive small number, to where we feel like in concept, we have a very good grasp of the potential. And then there's the conversation now with the town. The stakeholders have been involved and as we assessed all the different buildings and the concept of community risk reduction, having the elderly, it's a community center that moves the elderly in to do certain things. It's not to take over all the other buildings. The police would, for example, would be able to back a cruiser in during a storm, or the police chief could come and see me during a major incident, and it's set up to accommodate that. And then in the background, there's a lot of resiliency that's designed in. So if there was a problem at the police station, or if there was a problem at the fire station, or if dispatch had an issue, right now we are very vulnerable to a lot of those issues. We saw that in town hall. And so this is like, it's been a work in progress. It's a conversation. The town will be involved in it. But we needed to bring that whole concept together to talk about it without having an idea that it may range from 12 to 15 million in this fashion, and then get the input, whether we go bigger or go smaller.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Norman, would you like to follow up there? Otherwise, I'll go to Mike. You're on mute, sir. Norman, you're still on mute.
The $15 million is just for the facility. It does not include the land costs.
Any other question, Robert?
No, not at this time.
So we're in that process of still developing the plan, and this is for the land, for the facility, not the land.
Yep.
Which brings us to Mike. What's your question, sir?
All right, thank you. On behalf of Appropriation Committee member Shahadul Mannion, I'd like to ask this question. Post-COVID, we need to focus on bringing back normalcy, especially for our small businesses in downtown. Is there any plan and thinking to promote and support the small businesses, various commercial activities with special events or promotional effort as COVID hopefully phases out?
Who would you like to direct that at, Mike?
Anyone who can answer it. I suppose.
I can. I'll try. Yeah, that's a very good question, Mr. Manning, coming through you from Shadul. The town is constantly in conversations with the chamber. We do not have a specific plan at the moment. However, Mr. Shadul's suggestion is very well taken, and we'll bring it up with the chamber.
Any other leader?
Through our meetings with the chamber, we learn regularly that the chamber has its own organized events and activities to address Mr. Shadul's concern or suggestion.
Sean, a follow-up? You're up.
I just wanted to add that there are businesses that are currently opening in Hopkinton right now. You know, we just opened the fish market. There's another enterprise looking to open up at the former Old Town Liquors facility. And we, you know, once we get beyond case management this is going to be a focus on what we can do as the health department and how can we engage other other operations within the community to help support their reopening.
Any other leader like to follow up there? Which brings us to Gunnar.
Hi, thank you. This question is for Dr. Kavanaugh. Dr. Kavanaugh, first of all, thank you and your faculty for taking care of our children for the last year through COVID. I know remote learning is tough, hybrid is tough, but you and the faculty have done a really wonderful job. I wanted to ask a question similarly along the lines of what Gary had asked in terms of not so much the repair of some of the facilities, the maintenance and so on, but from a capacity perspective. Have we considered, I can't believe I'm asking this, but have we considered using a multi-shift driven sort of approach where different grades attend school at different times, just from, especially with those school systems where the capacity is absolutely close to the maximum? Have we considered that? And a follow-on question, which is, at times when certain facilities of the school systems are not being used, whether it's the basketball, the theater, or the beautiful turf grounds or whatever, have we considered contracting and raising revenue through other means?
Dr. Kavanaugh.
Sure. We actually do have, we make an awful lot of money every year, generate a lot of revenue through facilities use. If you pay attention to our budget for this year, you'll see that there's no offset because we really haven't had people using our facilities during COVID. But once we are beyond that, I'm sure that will come back. That whole notion of whether or not it would make sense to bring some kids in at 9 o'clock, some kids in at 10 o'clock, some kids in, you run into some problems with other functions in our schools. So for example, how would lunch be served? You can't serve lunch all day to kids. How would transportation work? By law, we have to transport every student grade K to 6. The commissioner now is in a place, and we all know this, where we're required to do 990 hours for our secondary students and 1,060 for our elementary students. He is probably not going to give districts ever again much wiggle room with that. I mean, that's part of his desire to bring everyone back. So I think, when you look at high school kids, they are those who are good at kind of navigating a curriculum or being responsible to get online and take notes and engage individually and independently with learning, they're doing great. But when I look at K to 5, we do so many activities where kids are sitting on floors, or they're hunched over together a laptop, or a teacher takes her hand and puts it over a student's hand to help that student form letters. Those are the pieces that you'd never be able to replicate, I think, at the elementary level. So, I mean, there are things to think about, but I don't know that we would ever get to a place where we could eliminate such a vast number of students that we would say we could stop thinking about square footage in our schools. I mean, I don't want to totally discount it, but I'm very skeptical, especially after having been through what we started on March 10th of last year and what we've been trying to do in the way of educating kids on either an every other day basis or on a remote basis. Those things have been very challenging.
Gunnar, does that get at it?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for answering.
Which brings us to Francis and then Irfan again.
John, thank you. My question is for Chief Bennett. Chief, it looks like the request for additional headcount. I'm curious, and my question is, what is driving that? Are we understaffed relative to our town population size or relative to other towns with similar populations? Or is this something kind of projecting for the future?
Chief.
Yes, thank you for that question. So we are currently understaffed. I have been working, and the prior chief was working with the town manager to identify the projected staffing needs. There was a study done prior to Legacy, public safety study and projections from that. So that being said, our strategic plan identified a shortfall, a present shortfall, and with the anticipated growth, it will continue. So by asking for one person, one body this year, it continues that progress towards meeting the goals of staffing.
Any follow-up, Francis?
No, that's good. Thank you, John.
Brings us to Irfan.
Thank you. Thank you. This is going to Parks and Rec regarding the skating rink. This is a temporary structure. Or is this something that we want to do permanently for $15,000? And then if you could just expand on the skate park for $350,000.
Jay, tell us about these two processes.
Sure. So the ice skating rink is a seasonal project that we've typically done in the past, probably 3 or 4 years. Usually we do it at the basketball courts up at the middle school. Once we had it over at Kerrigan Field under the lights. So that's a seasonal structure that we do for the benefit of residents who enjoy skating. The skate park, on the other hand, is a more permanent structure. Some might remember that a long time ago, they actually built a skate park down in the back corner of EMC Park. Over the years, just due to basic neglect and misuse, we had to take it down for safety reasons, but there's actually quite a few residents who are really into those non-traditional sort of athletics, which skating is a big part of. So we were approached by a very energetic group of residents to bring that back. So we did a study. We've been working on it for a little over a year now, the planning of it and design. And yeah, if it passes town meeting, we're gonna have a really, really cool skate park for probably mostly for teens and younger kids, but actually more adults than you actually would imagine. So we're really excited about it.
Do not limit those who can rage, Jay. Do not limit those who can skate.
Never. Like I said,
If I can add,
conclusion.
Dan.
if I could just add to Jay's comments, the funding source. I'm Dan Terry, and I'm chairman of the Parks and Rec Commission. The funding source, we've already been to CPC 2 years in a row to discuss this project, and CPC is overwhelmingly recommending this at town meeting. So the money that you mentioned, that $350,000, is through CPC.
Any other follow-up, Irfan?
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you.
Mary Jo, do you still have a question? You're on mute. You're back.
Okay. I just wanted to make everything clear now. A skate park, is it skateboarding only, or will there be roller skating, other kinds of, what kind of skating in total is associated with the skate park?
Good question, Jay.
Primarily, it will be skateboarding, but that's not to say that if someone wants to go down there with some rollerblades or maybe a scooter, like a roller scooter type of deal, we're certainly not going to limit it to skateboards only. We're going to really, really highly recommend that people wear helmets and are careful and all that. But no, we're not limiting it, but it will primarily be used for teens on skateboards would be my guess, and maybe some enthusiastic parents as well.
Time for a couple more questions, Francis.
Yeah, this is Jay. I'll keep you front and center here. In terms of the drainage at EMC Park, is that focused on the kind of the park side with the swings for the little kids, or does that expand to other areas there at EMC?
So we actually did a drainage study. There's also a few abutting residents that are kind of adversely affected by the current drainage situation. So as part of the design for this park, there's going to be like a drainage trench along the left side of the park, which ironically is a really awesome feature apparently of a skate park, that people actually like to skate in that drain for whatever. I'm not a skater, so I don't understand it. But yes, the draining issues will be addressed as part of this project.
It's also, John, again, if I may, a lot of this is to rectify of failed drainage systems that was put in place when EMC Park, when the baseball fields were built, Fran.
Thanks, guys.
That's clear, and we'll bring a skating expert next time to talk about how you can hit all the tricks. Brendan, you're up.
This question's for Chief Slamman. Chief, how are we I just heard Chief Bennett talk about his staffing, and that due to the growth, he needs to look to add to his department. How are you staffed in regards to what the NFPA sets their standards at as far as firefighters to lives in Hopkinton?
I would describe us as in line where we've been. It's roughly, they give you a number of 2 per 1,000. So 18,000 people, 36 firefighters. We're at 31 on the street. I think the more accurate piece I've been talking to you about is effective response force. I analyze every call. I try to see that we send out adequate personnel for safety and delivery of service. And we did really well this year. The 4 grant firefighters made a big difference. First time I've been able to report that since I've been chief. And so we're doing good. That's one of, I watch NFPA, I watch population growth, and I watch requests for service ratios daily just to see how we're doing. We're in a good spot, and that's why I didn't ask for additional personnel this year.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Chief.
Gunnar, you're up, and then Brian is our final question for the night.
Yeah, so really quickly, this question's for either Jay or Dan. Have you folks considered raising revenue through allowing sort of AAU teams play at EMC Park after the Little League season has ended?
Good question. We do that a little bit. Believe it or not, we at EMC Park specifically, even after the Little League season ends, there's a lot of tournaments like the Sizzler tournament and things like that. But we do have some baseball clinics done through a private organization at EMC. We have a lot of actually AAU basketball stuff in the past. Prior to the COVID situation, we had a lot of AAU basketball activity over at Center School and in the Hopkinton Public Schools as well. But we aggressively pursue all opportunities to maximize revenues on those fields.
Yeah, I think there's a window, Jay, between like once summer baseball ends and all throughout the fall. I know a lot of AAU teams are looking for fields, so I just thought that might be an opportunity.
Yeah, we're actually doing a lot. We're doing a lot of stuff with AAU, specifically Mizuno and Nakona over at the new field at the high school. We're doing a lot of tournaments over there and a lot of stuff over there. Again, not much last year, but going forward, we are anticipating a lot of AAU baseball and softball.
Okay.
Brian, you're up.
Last year, we had a lot of conversation in the community and certainly around the country specific to inclusion and diversity and topics along those lines. And the question I have is for Town Clerk Connor Deegan. Connor, is it appropriate, like in the private sector, when you recruit to hire, is it appropriate for the town to reach out to encourage folks to get involved and run for elected office from minority communities? Could we do something like that to foster more? I mean, I think we're making progress as a community. We certainly had a lot of dialogue around the MAPC pledge discussion here just a few weeks back. But as I scroll through the screen tonight, I think there's gender equity in a lot of the folks that are here this evening. But I'm not sure we're still including enough folks or enough folks are getting involved to have some more of the diversity that I think the community really wants to encourage and work under.
What's your thought, Connor?
Thank you, Brian. That's actually a fantastic question. So that's something that our department has. I personally think it's appropriate. Our department has actually been working on that. It's just part of our general community outreach and civic engagement initiatives, usually in tandem with other organizations in town as well. Obviously, COVID's kind of hit that a little bit because it's harder to host things like chances for people from minority groups or anything else to ask questions and try to figure out how they can get involved. But I actually worked very closely with EHOP on a series of education panels that would go and give small groups. Like I remember we worked with the South Asian Circle of Hopkinton to talk with them about how people can get involved regardless of if you're a permanent resident or a new citizen, or how can you actually get involved in town government and help your community. And I think it's entirely appropriate to keep doing that and keep pushing for making sure that the diversity that's out in our community is represented in our town government.
And I'm going to have to wrap it up there. I really would love to get to Alana and Heather too, but to be absolutely true to what Brendan asked us to do today, we're going to wrap up. Your assignment is to take the spreadsheet you were given of asks and put them in rank order, 1 to the final number of asks, and to mail that in to Ben, or you can send it to the town manager's office and he'll send it along. If you want to just print it out and write numbers on it, you can then just take a screenshot and send that along. Gary, a question?
Yeah, I just have a question about that. I mean, I find it really hard as I look at this list to prioritize, given that some of these are literally studies for future work, and some of them are very visionary budget requests. And I realize that's sort of the reality of the decisions that have to be made. But at the same time, without kind of, I mean, for you know, we could do everything except new school construction. So like, I'm hoping for a little bit more guidance. And, you know, in a perfect world, I'd even say, you know, allocate 100 points and spread those out among each of these or something like that. But just doing a stack ranking, I really worry that from a statistical, from a research perspective, that could be pretty misleading and misguided given the variation and all the different types of options here.
This is one tiny data set to do exactly what you just asked us to do, which is to create the more valuable conversation. And so we're doing this as an experiment, and I hear the other options for rating. And if this doesn't work out of this particular forum, then we can send out another ranking set very easily to this group of people to be sent back in again. So very well noted in terms of doing this statistically in the best way. This is just an initial experiment, as tonight's workshop was, to explore ways to be effective as a community. And again, if people don't want to rank it and don't want to send it in, that is absolutely your privilege. This is, again, an attempt to get as much data as possible. Norman, a final word before we turn it over to Brendan to close.
Again, I want to take this opportunity to thank all the board members, committee chairs for attending. Thank the department heads for your efforts getting ready for this presentation. Thank John Wetman, our facilitator, who has been working with us on this project for a while now. And also thank the residents who are attending. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the community for its support through the COVID-19 pandemic. And I wish everybody to remain safe and well.
Civic dialogue is the difference between our community being whole and equitable and truly taking care of each other. And you're a unique community with so many talented people and so much growth and so much success. May you continue to put the same vigor in that you did tonight, and continue to challenge the methods, as Gary just did, to make sure we get to the right answer for long-term strategic planning. Which turns it over to Brendan. Thank you all for letting me be part of your community tonight.
Thank you, John. And I would like to echo Norman's comments. Thank you, everybody, for coming, you know, making some time and getting together and having such a cordial civic dialogue. This was good. This is what the town needs. And I will turn this, my favorite motion, over to my my right-hand man, Irfan, to make the motion.
Mr. Chair, before I make my motion, I just want to thank John and Norman for a fabulous evening, a very interesting discussion. And with that, I would like to make a motion to adjourn for the evening.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Nasrullah, how do you vote?
Nasrullah, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Herr, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Frenier, yes.
Ms. Ritterbusch? Ted Stone, yes. So that is a 4-0 vote. So with that, thank you all very much for coming out and spending your evening with us. And we look forward to doing it again. Thanks, guys and girls.
Hey, everyone. Good night.
Thanks.